Hey, what's up, Toby? We are at episode 4 of the Process Dead podcast, and today we're going to dig in a little bit deeper onto what process debt is. You have some thoughts there, so I'm just going to
Thank you.
kick it across to you.
Appreciate it. Always happy to be joining you for these insightful calls
Yeah,
or, uh, just a little bit of venting.
sure.
One of the questions that came up, since our earlier episodes was somebody said, "But how do you describe process debt?" And I'd started by sharing, this kind of generic definition of tech debt
Yeah,
because a lot of people get that differently. That
yeah,
and
yeah,
and I've seen it described as the cost of future maintenance and rework.
yeah,
Right? As people prioritize speed over quality, as they
yeah.
prioritize something over consistency or over quality. And so I know you've thought deeply about this. I'm just kind of the sidekick, hopefully setting you up for some brilliant insights. And
Well,
so
let's hope
get
so.
ready. Yeah, fingers crossed. No, so tech debt better understood because people have been banging that drum, but process
Sure.
debt has been this hidden thing. How do
Yeah.
you describe process debt? How would you define process debt?
You know what's interesting is tech debt is unseen,
Yeah.
right? Like, you look at any corporation, you look at Amazon, Microsoft, Google, it doesn't matter. Somewhere in that organization, there is something falling apart and is duct taped together. And there's basically two people in the whole organization that understand it. And without them, it would just be a really, really painful ride. And and I think process debt is really similar. On the business
Mhm.
side, the only difference is, and I really define it as like the hidden burden of inefficient processes that erode growth, employee satisfaction, and organizational success. That's really how I define
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's hidden. And it's hidden because we don't think about our work oftentimes. Like, we don't work on our we do what we're asked, but we don't necessarily differentiate between work that is always done versus work that is one-time work. And I think if you could
Ah,
I think where you end up getting into trouble is you put a lot of process around one-time analysis or one-time work. And the stuff that you're gonna do all the time or in perpetuity, like a QBR or a
yeah.
monthly business review, those are the ones where you could get the greatest gains from just slowly defining the process and making it better and better
Yeah.
instead of doing complete and total overhauls. Because the reality what I've seen, and I've seen it at, probably every company that I've ever worked. I think about process probably too much in my head. But, but what you end up seeing is you end up seeing, like, people will take a framework
Yeah.
and they will hack that framework in a partial way only to come up with a semi-broken new process that doesn't work the way that the known process works. So, like, you take
Yeah.
SMART goals and you change the acronym because it's more flashy. Doesn't
Yeah.
work, right? You take
Kids
s
are awesome.
you take Scrum and you think that Scrum is, and we talked about this last time, but you take Scrum and you think it's just a meeting. No, no, there's actually purpose. There's like real reasons. You take a balanced scorecard where, like,
Mm,
businesses wanna grow, like, that's a given, but that we create all these, like, custom KPIs or custom,
mhm.
all the acronyms. They we don't
Yeah.
we just get away from them, and it creates this newness that is doesn't actually add value.
Yeah, it's a little bit too cute by half, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I feel like, with so many things in life, it may not be a perfect process, but if I'm the only operator in it
Yeah.
and I know what the steps are,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
important is the documentation?
Yeah.
Right? And we'll talk more about transferable and discoverable probably in a future episode, but, when to your point, like, if it's one-time analysis, I don't need to document every step.
Nope.
What I wanna get to is the outcome. And,
Yeah.
a lot of times you and I have been part of these conversations where we're saying, if you wanna become a deck builder, it's important to understand all your tools. If what
Yeah.
you wanna do is throw a barbecue, then cut to the chase. get
Yeah.
the deck built and focus more on picking out your stakes.
Yeah.
And so I love your call out around process. Too often we do try to engineer what we believe will be needed
Sure.
instead of this kind of discovery as we go. And personally, I would say my healthiest processes have been the result of, I should say, the healthiest ones I've touched over the
Yeah.
years, whether it was Sarbanes-Oxley or process reengineering work. Fundamentally, it's when somebody already understands very innately why they do things,
Yeah.
but they're so close to it and they're working in the business,
Yeah.
producing outputs that they don't have the time to look at it in total.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so sometimes that's the easiest way to kind of unlock it is
yeah.
that
Have I
perspective.
shared the Conway's law
Hmm.
with you
No,
before?
Conway's Law.
Yeah.
Jim Conway?
No, yeah, there you go, Conway. Yeah, not Tim
Oh,
Conway. Although, one of the
couple
funniest
Conley
things
gang.
for you, the kids out there that are in their 20s and 30s, Tim Conway does a skit of him being a dentist, and he puts the Novocaine in his hand. I've cried multiple times watching that thing. It is hilarious. Anyway, Conway's Law, I digress. Conway's Law is that organizational structure follows the business structure.
Mm,
Who your boss is,
right?
and so essentially, what you find oftentimes in businesses, you find very very efficient silos and
Interesting.
very crummy handoffs.
So it's very much a tone at the top. Whoever
Well,
sets that
yeah, it's
expectation.
because it's built top down, right?
Yeah,
Those silos get really, really, really good, but a
mm,
business isn't just one silo, it's 50, hundreds, thousands of
right.
silos,
Yeah,
and it's when that one silo, whatever they're delivering, right? Let's say they're delivering grain, right? They might be really good at getting that grain packaged, but that next piece of the process, whether that's bagging or something, like
right.
it's when it goes outside of that organizational structure, that's when you end up with process debt that no one sees because both
Yeah.
silos are super efficient. They're really good at what they do, but the in between, it's the handoff, and that handoff could be via code,
E
right? The handoff could be the fact that there needs to be operational supervision over that handoff, right? You know,
Yeah,
but I've seen that a lot, and that's why again, like process that oftentimes is hidden, and that's why like by by profession I'm in product, and so what happens oftentimes is the end users will ask for something, and well, what are you trying to do? And they're like, well, I'm trying to push this button faster.
yeah,
You're like, "No, no, 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 like, no, I don't not talking about pushing the button faster. We're talking about, like, what's the outcome of this?" And it's so hard for them to define because their work is tactical. And so it's
right,
like, "Oh, well, what I'm trying to do is I wanna, like I need to get more information from the client." And you're like, "Oh, okay, well, let's go upstream and figure that problem."
right. Well, I go back to your definition a minute ago. So, you know, it's invisible, which you've touched on several times, but the idea that it erodes growth. So
Yeah,
if I'm not seeing the detriment, is it, if a bear farts in the woods,
yeah.
that's a case of process debt. The second thing you touched on was employee satisfaction.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm satisfied enough, then who cares? But
Yeah,
then the third is really about organizational success,
yeah,
which feels like that overarching umbrella. So if it's not about employee facing, you know, how do you keep them engaged in the work? And it's
sure.
not about growing the business, then ultimately it's going to come back and it's going to bite us because we're just not going to be as successful.
Yeah. Well,
It's a
and the
nice
thing is
mis-
like, we've talked about this before too, like, you can't make something so perfect. Like, oftentimes businesses have to choose between revenue
yeah,
and perfect process, and unless you're manufacturing french fries or you're
yeah,
manufacturing Tide or something that you're basically selling billions of dollars of this thing, it's
right,
very hard because a lot of times business stuff is not repeatable, and the reason it's not repeatable is that overarching strategy never ties to something. And so like if we look at what happened over Gen AI, and again, we're running out of time again.
Mm.
We need to extend our podcast. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
This is the
but if
most
you look
powerful 5 minutes people are gonna have all day.
5
It
minutes
takes close to
times
10 minutes to get there, but
that's so funny. We so what's funny is like with like Gen AI just came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
like but where did that come from? Like
Right.
where did that align in the org?
Yeah.
Because it's whiplashed every business that I know of.
100%.
And like and the reality is like, okay, well, was that, and I was that a revenue play? Well,
Mm.
it's tough to make a revenue play when ChatGPT is free. Like, that's a tough that's a tough thing, right? But GPT makes me more efficient.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's maybe it's a better, efficiency play, ops efficiency, really. Now, that being said, maybe it's revisionist history. I will own that piece too. Like, I'm always smarter after the fact.
God knows. Hey,
I
man,
know.
me too.
Yeah.
Well, I have a hunch we'll come back to AI, again, because it's
Yeah.
a solution in search of a problem,
Yeah.
and we're all trying to pattern match to ask, "Is this one way for me to become
Yeah.
more efficient? Is it a one way for me to derive more joy
Yep.
out of the work I'm doing?"
Yep.
So, that's a great call out. Well, good. Hey, I appreciate you sharing the definition and
Yeah.
really starting to bring myself and our growing audience. Did I
Oh, yeah.
mention it's surging on the East Coast recently?
Being tens of people will
Tens
probably
of
listen.
people.
Tens of
Tens of
people.
people.
Like, we're not even, yeah, and which is sad considering our LinkedIn connections are, in the greater than tens.
We could
Like,
top 20 by the end of the year.
love it.
This is what consistency does for us. Chris, hey,
Consistency.
thanks a bunch.
Yep. Alright. Take care,
Always
man.
see you,
Great
bud.
catching up.